So there I was, mopping floors on Deep Space Station Omega-7, minding my own business, when the entire galaxy decided to have a collective nervous breakdown. And I mean the entire galaxy. Every species, every civilization, every pompous alien bureaucrat from here to the Andromeda Spiral was losing their minds over one thing: Vorthak the Destroyer. Now, let me paint you a picture of just how terrified everyone was. The Galactic Council, that fancy governing body that usually spent their time arguing about trade regulations and bathroom etiquette, had called an emergency session. Admiral Zephon, a 7-foot-tall blue guy with more medals than chest space, was literally shaking. His forearms were trembling so hard his ceremonial sword was playing percussion against his armor. 12 worlds, he kept repeating, like a broken record player. 12 entire worlds consumed. Billions of lives, countless civilizations, all reduced to cosmic dust. Next to him sat Chief Science Officer Nexara, a tentacled intellectual who normally corrected everyone's grammar mid-sentence. She was frantically scrolling through data streams, her tentacles moving so fast they looked like she was conducting an invisible orchestra having a seizure. "The quantum destructive capabilities are off the charts," she babbled. "Our most advanced neural disruptors barely scratched its exoskeleton. The photon torpedoes bounced off like rubber balls. Even the infinity cannon just made it angry. Let me tell you what they'd tried so far. First, they sent the armada of righteous fury, 30,000 ships armed with enough firepower to crack a moon. Vorthak ate them for breakfast. Then they deployed the reality warpers, these ancient weapons that could supposedly rewrite the laws of physics. Vorthak used them as toothpicks. They even tried negotiating, sending their best diplomats with briefcases full of treaties and trade agreements. Vorthak apparently has very little interest in galactic peace accords. The thing was, nobody had actually seen Vorthak up close and lived to tell about it. All they knew was that it showed up, planets went silent, and when the dust settled, there was nothing left but empty space and a very satisfied predator looking for its next meal. The rumors painted it as some sort of cosmic horror, a creature of pure destruction that fed on despair and seasoned its meals with the screams of the innocent. Which brings me to the part where yours truly enters the picture. I'm Jake Murphy, maintenance technician 3rd class, specializing in fixing things that other people break. I've got a high school diploma, 10 years of experience keeping rust buckets running in deep space, and a philosophy that's served me well: if something's broken, hit it with a wrench until it works or admits defeat. So there I am, listening to these aliens panic about their unstoppable destroyer, when Admiral Zephon makes his grand announcement. We need a volunteer for a reconnaissance mission, someone expendable, someone whose loss won't impact our strategic capabilities. Well, that hurt my feelings just a little bit. But the pay was good, the life insurance was better, and honestly, I was getting tired of scrubbing alien food stains out of the cafeteria floor. Plus, how bad could it be? I've dealt with clogged toilets that were scarier than most things in space. I'll do it, I said, raising my hand. The entire council chamber went silent. You could have heard a pin drop if pins made noise in the vacuum of space. Admiral Zephon's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, like Christmas lights with a short circuit. You? Nexara's tentacles stopped moving entirely. But you're just a maintenance worker. Exactly, I said. I fix things. Sounds like you've got something needs fixing. Now, let me tell you about my qualifications for taking on the galaxy's most feared predator. I've been fixing broken stuff for as long as I can remember. Started with my dad's old pickup truck when I was 12, worked my way up through air conditioners, space heaters, and eventually the life support systems that keep people breathing in the cold, dark void of space. My toolbox is pretty simple. I've got duct tape, the silver miracle that holds the universe together. I've got WD-40, which makes squeaky things quiet and stuck things unstuck. I've got a hammer for percussive maintenance, a screwdriver for when finesse is required, and a flashlight because you can't fix what you can't see. That's it. That's my entire arsenal against cosmic destruction. The Council, meanwhile, had been throwing technology at this problem like it was going out of style. Quantum phase disruptors, temporal displacement bombs, reality-bending warheads that cost more than most planets' gross domestic product. They had weapons that could theoretically unmake existence itself, staffed by scientists with degrees in subjects that didn't even have names yet. "Surely you'll need proper equipment," Admiral Zephon insisted, gesturing to a warehouse full of gleaming death machines. "Perhaps the Mark VI annihilation suit, or the cosmic horror neutralization array." I looked at the fancy gear, all blinking lights and ominous humming noises. What does it do? It reconfigures subatomic particles to create localized reality distortions that can theoretically pierce any known defense matrix. Does it work? Well, no, but the theory is sound. This is the problem with aliens, I've noticed. They love making things complicated. They'll spend 1,000 years perfecting a machine that can split atoms with mathematical precision, when sometimes what you really need is a good old-fashioned crowbar and the willingness to use it. My philosophy is pretty straightforward. If it moves and it shouldn't, duct tape it. If it doesn't move and it should, WD-40 it. If it still doesn't work after that, percussive maintenance usually does the trick. Hit it, kick it, sweet-talk it, threaten it with replacement parts, whatever it takes. "I'll stick with what I know," I told them, patting my toolbox. "These tools got me through 15 years of keeping this rust bucket operational. They'll get me through one overgrown space bug." Nexara's tentacles went rigid with horror. "Space bug? Sir, this is a cosmic entity of unfathomable power. It has devoured entire star systems. It has capabilities beyond our comprehension." "Yeah, but has anyone actually tried turning on the lights and seeing what it looks like?" The silence that followed was telling. For all their advanced sensors and deep space reconnaissance, nobody had actually gotten close enough to get a good look at their cosmic horror. They'd been fighting shadows and rumors, throwing billion-credit weapons at something they'd never actually seen. Chief Science Officer Nexara pulled up holographic displays showing energy readings and gravitational distortions. Our long-range sensors indicate massive biosignatures, quantum disruption fields, and psionic emanations that suggest a creature of impossible size and malevolent intelligence. Or, I suggested, it's just really big and really hungry. The look they gave me suggested they thought I was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Honestly, I wasn't sure which one was right. But I've learned that most problems, even the scary, complicated ones, usually have pretty simple solutions once you stop overthinking them. Admiral Zephon tried one more time to talk me out of it. "The mortality rate for encounters with Vorthak is 100%. Good thing I'm not planning on dying then." I shouldered my toolbox and headed for the shuttle bay. Besides, somebody's got to be the first to survive meeting this thing. Might as well be the guy who knows how to fix broken stuff. So there I was, flying through space in a shuttle that was basically held together with positive thinking and regular maintenance, heading toward planet Zorvex where Vorthak was supposedly having lunch. The Galactic Council was monitoring everything from a safe distance of about 50 light years, which tells you everything you need to know about their confidence in my survival. The planet looked normal enough from orbit. Sure, there were some scorch marks and what appeared to be bite marks the size of continents, but I've seen worse damage from college kids with fireworks. The atmosphere was still there, gravity was working fine, and my sensors weren't screaming about immediate death, which I took as a good sign. "Jake Murphy to Galactic Command," I radioed back. "I'm seeing a lot of property damage down here, but nothing that looks like cosmic horror. Mostly looks like something big had a temper tantrum." Admiral Zephon's voice crackled through the communicator. "Be advised, Murphy, long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures approaching your location." "How massive are we talking?" "Approximately the size of a city." "Which city?" "Pick one." "Any city." Well, that was mildly concerning. I set the shuttle down in what used to be a nice suburban area and grabbed my gear. Flashlight, duct tape, basic tools, and a thermos of coffee, because caffeine makes everything better. As I stepped outside, I could feel the ground vibrating under my feet, like someone was playing bass-heavy music at a volume that violated several noise ordinances. Then I saw it. Now, the Galactic Council had described Vorthak as an incomprehensible cosmic entity, a being of pure malevolence that defied description. What I saw was basically a giant beetle. Sure, it was a giant beetle the size of a shopping mall with too many legs and an attitude problem, but still just a beetle. It had the same basic body plan, the same compound eyes, and the same annoying habit of scuttling around and knocking things over. "Oh, come on," I said out loud. "You've got to be kidding me." Vorthak heard me and turned in my direction. Up close, I could see that its compound eyes were actually kind of pretty, like black diamonds catching the light. Unfortunately, those eyes were currently focused on me with what I can only describe as predatory interest. It let out a roar that shook the ground and probably registered on seismographs 3 planets over. Then it charged. Now, I've been chased by angry machinery before. Conveyor belts with attitude, generators with grudges, air recyclers that took personal offense to routine maintenance. The trick is not to panic. Panic makes you stupid, and stupid gets you eaten by giant space beetles. Instead of running, I did something that apparently no one in the entire galaxy had thought to try. I turned on my flashlight. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Vorthak skidded to a halt like someone had hit the brakes on a freight train. Its compound eyes dilated, it let out a confused chittering noise, and it actually took a step backward. "Well, I'll be damned," I muttered. "You're afraid of the light." I waved the flashlight around a bit, and Vorthak's massive head followed the beam like a cat watching a laser pointer. Every time I pointed it directly at the creature, it flinched and backed away. When I lowered it, the beetle regained its confidence and started advancing again. "Jake Murphy to Galactic Command," I radioed. "Question for you. In all your fancy sensor readings and scientific analysis, did anyone ever think to check if this thing was nocturnal?" The silence on the other end was deafening. "Murphy," Admiral Zephon finally replied, "are you suggesting that the destroyer of 12 worlds is simply light-sensitive?" "I'm suggesting that your cosmic horror is basically a really big cockroach that doesn't like bright lights. Have you tried turning on a lamp?" More silence. Then Nexara's voice, sounding like she'd just discovered that gravity was optional. Our quantum analysis focused on energy signatures and destructive capabilities. We never considered basic biological behavioral patterns. "Of course you didn't." I kept the flashlight trained on Vorthak, who was now cowering behind what used to be a city hall. "You were too busy building doomsday weapons to try the simplest solution first. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that this was going to be easy. Sure, Vorthak didn't like bright lights, but it was still a creature that had eaten 12 worlds and had apparently gotten pretty good at the whole planetary destruction thing. As soon as it figured out that I only had one small flashlight, it started getting creative. First, it tried the indirect approach. Instead of charging straight at me, it started circling around, staying just outside the range of my light beam. Smart cookie, this cosmic destroyer. It began using the ruined buildings as cover, ducking behind skyscrapers and popping up where I wasn't expecting it. "Okay," I said, "so you're not just a big dumb bug." Point taken. Then it started throwing things, and by things I mean city blocks. Chunks of concrete the size of houses came sailing through the air, and I had to admit that my flashlight wasn't much help against good old-fashioned physics. I ducked, rolled, and generally tried not to get pancaked by flying architecture. That's when I broke out the duct tape. Now, most people think duct tape is just for sealing ducts, but those people lack imagination. Duct tape is the universe's way of saying that any problem can be solved with enough adhesive and creative thinking. I started stringing it between buildings, creating tripwires and sticky traps that would make Vorthak's day significantly more complicated. The first time the giant beetle ran into a duct tape barrier, the sound was like a cosmic violin string snapping. Vorthak's front legs got tangled up in the adhesive, and it went down hard, taking out what remained of the financial district in the process. Jake Murphy to Galactic Command. I radioed while Vorthak struggled to free itself. I need you to understand something. You've been treating this like some kind of mystical force of nature, but it's just a really big animal. It has instincts, behavioral patterns, weaknesses. You've been fighting the idea of Vorthak instead of fighting Vorthak itself. Admiral Zephon's voice came back confused. But the destruction, the power readings, the complete annihilation of civilizations. Yeah, because you kept sending it things to be afraid of. Loud weapons, bright explosions, swarms of attack ships. This thing is basically a giant bug that's been having panic attacks for who knows how long. When something's scared and confused, it lashes out. When it lashes out and it's the size of a city, bad things happen to planets. While I was explaining basic animal psychology to the galaxy's military leadership, Vorthak had managed to tear free from my duct tape trap. It was looking at me with what I can only describe as renewed respect. Apparently, being the first being in 12 worlds to successfully inconvenience it had earned me some kind of status upgrade. This time, when it charged, it was faster, smarter, and significantly more annoyed. I had to get creative with my defensive strategy, which mostly involved running around like an idiot while trying to set up more duct tape obstacles. The thing about maintenance work is that it teaches you to think three-dimensionally. When you're trying to fix a broken pipe in a crawlspace while water is spraying everywhere and the power keeps cutting out, but you learn to work with whatever you've got and make it count. I started using the flashlight not just to scare Vorthak, but to guide it where I wanted it to go. Shine the light to the left, and it would dodge right, point it down, and it would rear up. I was essentially herding a city-sized beetle through an obstacle course made of duct tape and determination. "This is ridiculous," I muttered, diving behind a collapsed overpass as Vorthak's tail swept through the space where I'd been standing. 12 worlds fell to something that can be confused by basic misdirection. But that's when I realized something important. Vorthak wasn't just randomly destroying things. There was a pattern to the damage, a method to the madness. It wasn't eating the planets, it was rearranging them, taking pieces from here, moving them there, like it was trying to build something. "Oh," I said, as understanding dawned. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." So there I was, crouched behind the ruins of what used to be a perfectly nice shopping mall, watching a giant space beetle play with planetary debris like building blocks, when the truth hit me like a ton of cosmic bricks. Vorthak wasn't a destroyer. Vorthak was an artist. A really, really bad artist with zero sense of scale and a complete inability to understand that using inhabited planets as raw materials was generally frowned upon by the locals. But still, an artist. I could see it now, the pattern in the destruction. The way it had carved up continents and rearranged them. The careful placement of mountain ranges and the artistic scattering of city ruins. This wasn't random devastation. This was someone trying to create the galaxy's worst sculpture project. "Jake Murphy to Galactic Command," I radioed. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. When Vorthak finished with those 12 worlds, what did the aftermath look like?" A pause. Then Nexora's voice, chaotic. Nonsensical arrangements of matter. Geological formations that defied physics. We assumed it was simply random destruction. Or, I suggested, really terrible landscape architecture. I stood up from my hiding spot and walked toward Vorthak, who was currently trying to balance a city-sized chunk of concrete on top of what used to be a mountain. The creature saw me coming and tensed up, probably expecting another round of flashlight tag. Instead, I sat down on a convenient piece of rubble and really looked at what Vorthak was doing. It was awful. I mean truly spectacularly bad. The proportions were all wrong, the color scheme was non-existent, and the structural integrity was more of a suggestion than a reality. But it was definitely intentional. You know, I called out to the giant beetle, if you're going for an abstract expressionist vibe, you might want to consider using materials that aren't currently occupied by sentient beings. Vorthak paused in its construction efforts and looked at me. I could swear I saw confusion in those compound eyes. I pulled out my duct tape and started making a small demonstration model using pieces of debris. Nothing fancy, just a basic structural framework that wouldn't collapse under its own weight. See, the problem with your technique is that you're not thinking about load-bearing requirements. This piece here? I pointed to Vorthak's latest addition. It's going to fall over because you don't have proper foundation support. As if on cue, Vorthak's sculpture collapsed in a cascade of rock and regret. The creature let out what I can only describe as an artistic sigh of frustration. Then it started paying attention to my little demonstration. Really paying attention. The thing about building stuff, I continued, wrapping duct tape around key structural points, is that form follows function. You can make it pretty, but it has to work first. Otherwise, you're just making expensive garbage. I held up my small-scale model, which was admittedly not going to win any art contests but was at least structurally sound. Vorthak examined it with the intensity of a student studying for finals. Then something amazing happened. Vorthak started to rebuild its sculpture, but this time with proper engineering principles. It used my duct tape model as a reference, scaling up the proportions and actually considering things like weight distribution and structural integrity. That's it, I encouraged. Now you're getting somewhere. Art is great, but engineering is forever. Murphy, Admiral Zephon's voice crackled through the communicator. What exactly are you doing down there? Art therapy, I replied. Turns out your cosmic destroyer is just really frustrated about its lack of proper construction techniques. Give me a few more rolls of duct tape and maybe some WD-40, and I think we can work something out. Over the next few hours, I basically gave the galaxy's most feared predator a crash course in basic construction and aesthetic principles. We worked together, Vorthak handling the heavy lifting while I provided technical guidance and quality control. The flashlight became a pointing tool rather than a weapon, helping me direct attention to specific structural elements. By the time we were done, Vorthak had created something that was actually not terrible. It wasn't going to win any awards, but it was stable, it had a certain rough charm, and most importantly, it was built out of uninhabited rock formations rather than populated cities. Vorthak stepped back to admire its work, and I swear I could see pride in those compound eyes. Then it looked at me and made a sound that I can only describe as grateful chittering. Yeah, well, I said, patting what I hoped was a friendly part of its exoskeleton. Everybody needs a hobby. Just maybe stick to uninhabited materials next time, okay? 3 days later, I was back on Deep Space Station Omega-7, trying to explain to a room full of very confused aliens why the galaxy's greatest threat was now peacefully sculpting asteroid belts in an uninhabited system somewhere near the Earth, Crab Nebula. Admiral Zephon kept staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You're telling me that 12 worlds died because nobody offered Vorthak art lessons?
I'm telling you that 12 worlds died because everyone was so busy being terrified that nobody bothered to figure out what Vorthak actually wanted. I corrected. Fear makes you stupid. Stupid gets people killed.
Chief Science Officer Nixara was frantically taking notes with all her tentacles simultaneously. We must study these techniques. The practical applications of adhesive-based diplomatic solutions could revolutionize our approach to cosmic threats. Or, I suggested, you could just try talking to things before you start shooting at them. They gave me medals. Lots of them. The Order of Galactic Heroism, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Medal of Exceptional Courage in the face of incomprehensible horror. They made speeches about my bravery and my innovative tactical approaches. They offered me promotions, command positions, and enough money to buy my own space station. What they really wanted, though, was to weaponize my methods. They kept asking about the advanced human techniques I'd used, trying to figure out how to turn duct tape and common sense into some kind of military doctrine. It's not advanced, I kept telling them. It's just basic problem solving. You identify what's actually wrong, you figure out what you've got to work with, and you fix it. That's it. That's the whole secret. But they didn't want to hear that. They wanted complicated answers to simple problems, because complicated answers made them feel smart and important. Simple solutions made them feel like they'd been wasting their time, which they had been. The Galactic Council offered me a position as Chief Strategic Consultant, with a salary that would let me buy the really good duct tape. The kind that's rated for vacuum exposure and comes in different colors. The job description basically amounted to fix problems that everyone else has overcomplicated. I took the job. Not because I wanted to be a hero, but because the galaxy apparently needed someone to point out when the Emperor wasn't wearing any clothes. Plus, the health insurance was amazing, and they promised me a workshop where I could keep all my tools organized. My first official case involved a reality-threatening anomaly that was causing stars to disappear. Turned out to be a giant space whale with hiccups. Solution: cosmic antacid and a gentle pat on the back. Cost: 12 credits and some patience. My second case was a dimensional rift of infinite destruction that was supposedly going to unravel the fabric of space-time. Actual problem: someone had installed a hyperspace relay backwards. Solution: turn it around. Cost: 5 minutes and a screwdriver. The pattern was becoming clear. The more expensive and complicated the proposed solution, the simpler the actual problem usually was. The galaxy was full of beings who were so smart they'd forgotten how to think. But that's the thing about being human. We're not the strongest species or the smartest or the most technologically advanced. What we are is practical. We look at problems and we fix them with whatever we've got handy, whether that's duct tape, determination, or just the willingness to try something that might not work. Jake Murphy, to anyone who's listening, I radioed during my morning rounds, checking on a malfunctioning food replicator that 3 engineers with advanced degrees had declared unfixable. Remember, folks, the universe is basically just a really big machine. And like any machine, most problems can be solved with the right tool, a little patience, and the understanding that sometimes percussive maintenance is a valid repair technique. The food replicator responded to a gentle kick and started producing coffee again. Another crisis averted, another day at the office for the galaxy's least complicated hero. And somewhere out in the asteroid belt, Vorthak was probably putting the finishing touches on its latest masterpiece, using proper structural engineering and uninhabited materials, just like I taught it. Sometimes the best solutions are the simple ones. Sometimes all you need is a flashlight, some duct tape, and the courage to treat cosmic horrors like the oversized problems they usually are. The universe is a weird place, but it's not nearly as complicated as everyone makes it out to be.